Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of The Family Business, where we discuss the intertwining of family and careers. I am more than proud to introduce to you Dr. Aruna Jayaraman and her husband, Vivek. We go back quite a bit of time, Vivek and I. This is my first opportunity to speak with Aruna, so I'm looking forward to that. Hey, guys, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Hey man, thanks for having us.
That was an easy choice, man. So, if you guys wouldn't mind, take each a minute just to give a bit of a snapshot of what you're doing today so everyone can get a general idea of who you are and what you're doing, and then we'll delve into your careers and your family.
Sure. Well, my name is Vivek Jayaraman. I currently serve as the Chief Operating Officer at Sirius Corporation. We're a company in the blood safety space. We manufacture an assay that's used to inactivate pathogens, viruses, bacteria in blood products prior to transfusion. So, particularly notable right now, we're actively involved in a number of the CCP efforts that are occurring globally as people look for ways to combat COVID-19. So it's been pretty busy, but certainly very rewarding, and it's great to play a small role in hopefully helping navigate through the current dynamics.
It's not a small role, folks. Saris has been instrumental in leading the charge in this particular niche, considering all that's going on with COVID, as they did with Zika. So it's certainly more than he's letting on. He's just being humble. Doc, you're up.
For the great work of the company, so thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. And Doctor?
So I'm a gastroenterologist at Sutter Santa Rosa here, and I'm working part-time. Doesn't go part-time, but theoretically I work part-time.
Yeah, I was going to say, your version of part-time is not very part-time. So, Vivek, did you have to look up hepatology when you first met her to know what she was talking about?
I still have a hard time pronouncing gastroenterology and hepatology. So.
You write it on your palm?
Yeah, most of my notes, but it's you're always encouraged to marry someone smarter than you. Clearly, for me, that wasn't particularly hard, but I cleared that bar pretty significantly.
How'd y'all meet?
On JDate.
Proud of you.
No, we were actually we were introduced through family, and then we had another friend who had tried to set us up a couple years prior to that, but we met. We just in fact celebrated our 17th wedding anniversary last month. So yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same?
Yes, yeah.
Hesitation there.
It's been great. I mean, we have a beautiful family, and I think that we kind of make things work despite our work. So no, I feel very lucky.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have an interesting pathway in that your careers ascended rather quickly. I mean, forgetting about the level of success, it's more the level of responsibility that came about early in life. So if you wouldn't mind, I would love to start there. When you're getting married relatively early as far as statistically, and then starting a career and growing quickly ahead of the curve, how do you juggle all of that? Because things are coming at you pretty fast, probably earlier than most people's maturity can handle.
I'll take a stab at it. I think one of the things that was helpful, honestly, is we, I guess early is a relative thing. I mean, I was 29, I was 27 when we got married. So, I'd say it wasn't particularly late or early necessarily, but by the time we got married, Aruna was already in her fellowship. And so had, advanced pretty far in terms of her medical training, which I think was certainly, by the time we had kids, she was through residency and fellowship. And I think that was certainly helpful. I mean, the demands of her job are always quite high, but being on the other side of training pretty quickly was certainly helpful. Looking back on it, you can articulate sort of this very thoughtful or planned approach to how we navigate anything, but it was, there were a lot of trade-offs and sacrifices along the way, decisions we've had to make. I mean, I feel very fortunate to, have Aruna as a partner in all these things because, it's, I mean, we've been fortunate, but I don't know that, yeah, as I struggle to articulate the answer to your question, I think, it's been, we've been very fortunate to have the support of one another. I think we have a strong support network with our families, and the kids have been great too. And I think for them, it's good to see a model of both parents working and pursuing things of import professionally while also making them obviously our number one priority.
Well, so one of the things that you guys have obviously in common is healthcare, and it's interesting from the kids' perspective. Are they interested in becoming physicians or working in the healthcare space, or because of you guys talk about it so much, they don't want to do anything remotely related to what you guys do? Like, how does that conversation go at dinner when it talks about medicine in general?
It goes, I don't know that either of them really wants to be a physician. We can come and say hi.
Absolutely.
Huh? Yeah, we can come and say hi. What's happening? This is Nina.
Hello,
So
Mia.
Nina the other day in the car mentioned how she just forgets that I'm a doctor sometimes. Because really,
I thought that was Uppa.
no, that was you. And that I'm really just her amma, which is what we say for mother. So, but no, I don't know that she wants to be a doctor. Sometimes our son talks about being a doctor. Sometimes, right?
When?
But at dinner time, we're talking about these kinds of things. No, we don't do it.
Is there something that you do want to do?
So, but her memory is better than mine.
So Nina, Mr. Kaufman's asking, is there something you would like to do?
Mr.
Mr. Kaufman, that's the gentleman who's there.
Kaufman?
I'm
Kaufman.
famous. Very famous.
So is there something you would like to do?
What?
What would you like to do professionally?
Well, I have a bunch of things that I might want to try. Author for one.
Author.
Maybe a paintist or however you say. Painter. Maybe a gardener, but probably not.
You know how to become a really good writer? I'm going to give you a secret. The best writers are the best readers. So you start by reading, and that's how you become a good writer. Because here's the trick.
I read a lot.
I know. Dad told me. So the more you read, the bigger your vocabulary gets. And when you know a lot of words, there's nothing you cannot write. That's awesome. Give it a try. I write a lot, and it's my favorite thing to do.
I write a lot in Google Docs.
Perfect. Awesome.
I believe our conversation's been, oh, there she goes. In theory, they're in remote school right now, but I assume they're in a break between classes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, my son comes to visit me, and I'm like, but aren't you supposed to be in class? He goes, yeah. I said, well, I hear someone talking. Shouldn't you? Yeah. It's hopeless. It's hopeless. Yeah, it's interesting how they tend to pick up some of the things that you do and say, are you guys readers or writers? Did she pick that up from you, or it's just it's something she got on her own?
To read. I don't like to write at all. I love to read. The writing part, that's all her. Maybe it's one thing, but it's not me.
Yeah, Aruna's a voracious reader, and the kids definitely emulate her in that regard. I feel like I have to read so much for work that honestly, like the level of reading for pleasure has plummeted in the last few years, but I also do a decent amount of writing. So.
It's funny. For me, it's been proportional as I age that I can't get through reading a chapter a night because I fall asleep. I wake up with the book on my head a lot, and it's mildly embarrassing, but it happens to me on a regular basis. It's a shame because I used to read more than I did anything else. But I would hope that she would continue because to me, the kids don't pick up that skill of how to write because nowadays everything's typing and they don't have to kind of formulate their thoughts the same way. So it's kind of a lost art. So when you guys had this opportunity to start building your career and you stayed in Northern California, which is a bit different than most people I talk to. Most people live in the South Bay or in the city, and you guys have stayed north. I'm curious what your thoughts are there from your decisions? Was it always family driven? Was it business driven? Like, what prompted you to stay in an area that, let's just say, it doesn't have a ton of opportunity like the South Bay does?
Yeah. I'll take a shot at that, and maybe I don't know. I think it's part of it, as I mentioned before. Some of it's serendipitous. Some of it is intentional. When we first came out here, to be honest with you, so I was at the time we got married. We were on the East Coast. We were basically outside of Baltimore. I was working in DC for Medtronic. Aruna was finishing up her fellowship, and we had talked about Northern California being a place we might want to go, but we thought more sort of Bay Area proper. I lived in San Francisco for a period of time, and when the opportunity with Medtronic to transfer out to Santa Rosa came up, we didn't appreciate how removed to some degree Sonoma County and the North Bay is from the Bay Area proper. But we came out here, and I think honestly at that time, this is pre-kids, we thought we'd move back east, after a couple of years. And then, as you probably can appreciate, once you have kids and you start to establish some roots, Aruna has started to establish a strong reputation in the clinical community here. You start to feel somewhat grounded. And then when I had an opportunity to transition to a startup, it just so happened to be Santa Rosa based as well. So that kept us here. And I think what we realized is, we just like we like the environment. We've been able to navigate our careers, I think, with moderate success. And most importantly, we've been able to provide some stability for the kids. Certainly fire season is something that's getting a bit old as we go through year 3.
The fact that that's a season is just sobering beyond belief. And I don't know if you're comfortable bringing it up, but they lost their home in the last bout of fires, and probably the most disquieting piece of video I ever saw in my life was when you sent me what was left of your house. I still have it on my phone, and I don't know if you guys want to go here or not. We don't have to, but I'm curious how that impacted you as a family and your kids, and how you guys bounced back from it in such a positive way to rebound.
I think that honestly made us realize just how much we love living here, because when we lost our house, the whole thing was like, well, why don't we move? He doesn't actually work in the North Bay. And we really considered it. And the thought of leaving this community was just really, it was just not something that I wanted to do. I think that the nice thing about the North Bay is that it's very laid back compared to the rest of the Bay Area. And and it's just a great community. But I think that we got through it just because we had so much to be grateful for still. Like you just focus on what you do have. We got out of there just fine. We made it out fine, and even the whole rebuilding process, it went fine. And we're in our home again now, and that just makes it all okay. Makes it great. So
I mean, the kids handled it incredibly well. As then Matt, I was actually out of town for work when the fires happened, so I don't know, as being modest, but she got.
I was going to go there next. I had a feeling she was understating just a bit.
House, at 2 a.m, and literally,
it's the 3-year anniversary today.
Yeah,
is that right? Holy
night.
Smokes!
Yeah, it was last night 3 years ago.
Wow, yeah, that's true. But the kids at the time, I mean, they're 13 and 9 now, so they were 10 and 6. See, I can do math, but they were
with your shoes on.
I know, but they were they've handled it remarkably well. It's certainly an extreme way to teach this lesson, but I think for my son, he's developed an appreciation for how fortunate he is, because we were able to recover fairly quickly, get into our home. They were, I think it's also created a certain level of detachment from material possessions, which is probably good at the end of the day, because those can be taken from you like that. And yet and I think it's brought us closer, like, I mean, we were always pretty close, but I think the four of us know we can really count on each other, which is great. So it's, again, it's an extreme way to learn these lessons, but I do think it's brought into focus all the stuff we are lucky to have and fortunate. We're fortunate.
Yeah, look, the most memorable and best lessons are expensive, and that's just the way that it's always been in my life, and apparently that's the case here. So, for Aruna, for you building up a substantial practice, how do you juggle all of that, knowing that you have, obviously the kids looking to you, and Vivek travels quite a bit, but you have a substantial career going on. So I'm curious how you kind of come to terms with all of this, and because from what I know, you have a several month backlog of patients all waiting to see you. You're obviously very popular and skilled at what you do. How do you manage all of that?
It's been hard. It's kind of a day-to-day thing that you just,
We're not supposed to remind her of this.
Way to step in it.
The great thing about my career is that I am the only woman there are a couple women at Kaiser here, but outside of Kaiser, I'm the only female gastroenterologist in Sonoma County. So that being said, it makes it so that I do have some control over my schedule. And so it's been very nice that before the kids were distance learning, I would drop them on my way to work, go to work, and then come back, pick them up on my way home from work, and come home. And I think that when I'm home, they just see me as their mom, So, and then on the days, because I do work part time, but on those days that they would be at school and I didn't have patients scheduled, I'm just trying to catch up. And so there's a lot of catching up after they go to bed or when they're otherwise occupied. It's been easier because Vivek's parents have moved here now, and so we do have family here now, which really helps a lot. The fact that the kids are older really helps a lot. I have gone into closets to call patients and things like that from so that they aren't like trying to find me in the midst of me trying to have a real conversation with the patient. So things are definitely so much easier now than they ever were. And now I have this full-time stay-at-home, but working from home husband, which
full-time stay on Zoom,
which has been great because we do have this backlog. And so I've been working more now than I ever have been since we had kids, honestly.
Really?
So, so it's not easy. But I can't imagine giving that part of my life up because I love work. I love what I do. And I do want our kids to see that you can have two parents who have careers and make it work. I grew up with that. And
So, is that right?
Yeah, both my parents are physicians. And, my mother worked in an ER because she had flexibility with her hours, and I grew up with my sisters. My mother would take us to work when she went for the evening shift. She would drive us to the hospital with her. We would wait in her call room while my father, a family physician, would finish rounding in the hospital. He'd come to the call room, pick us up, and take us back home. And that was until we were old enough to be home by ourselves. So,
You're funny. You're describing it like, what? Like, listen, for most kids, that's bananas. And, it's funny. The way I grew up, my parents were in retail and they owned their own stores. And so I ate dinner at 10 o'clock at night with my dad most of the time. He'd come in because he worked his tail off all day. And I didn't know that people didn't eat at 10 o'clock. I thought that's what everybody did. And so it's the same thing. You're sitting in a waiting room like, what? You don't wait in a waiting room? No, I never wait in a waiting room. That's truly amazing. Now, did you feel obligated to become a physician?
Yes. Yeah, I have the very typical white stereotype thing that I could either be a doctor or an engineer.
Yeah.
So I knew at an early age that was what I was going to do.
Yeah, I can't get out of my head the image of what you said like a minute or two ago. I keep imagining Vivek's parents walking around the house looking for you and trying to find you in a closet. Do they do the pop in? Do they just show up, or how does that work?
It's the kids that are really.
Yeah. No, my parents are pretty. They definitely don't come over unannounced. And so, but there was a time when we were rebuilding the house post fire that all 6 of us were living together. There was a period,
Yes.
and that was certainly that was interesting. but no, it's been good to have them here. I mean, prior to the pandemic and and sort of travels halted, I mean, we would literally plan out 6 months in advance our calendar, and so Arna would get her call schedule. I would look at sort of meetings that I had to get to, and we would work really diligently to make sure there was no deviation from that, and so like planning, because the fact is, like, if I'm prior to COVID-19, I was out of the country at least 8 to 10 times a year, and so, but it means like a number of red eyes and first flight back, but somehow, I mean,
well, it's different when you guys each have meetings and she has a surgery to go to that someone's life depends on it. There's a little bit of a different priority there, I would think. It's not like she can just reschedule, someone else's situation. Their liver can wait. No big deal. Yeah, it's neat. Now, your son and my son have a bit in common with soccer, I think. And I was curious if it's because I know you and your brother played at a higher level. Does he take on the same interest, or it's not as catching with him?
So we're clearly overdue to catch up on that front. Soccer is sort of on the way of the dinosaur. It's all tennis all the time now.
Really? Both of them, or just him?
Well, for both of them, and it's actually an ideal sport, for social distancing and all of that. Yep. And so the one saving grace in all of this for them, and I think the thing that's really helped maintain some level of continuity is they both play instruments and they both play a lot of tennis, and so they've been able to maintain that extracurricular activity, get out, get exercise. They've become much more diligent about practicing their instruments now, because it's kind of something they can, that's still theirs, if they can do, that this pandemic hasn't taken from them. But,
they play the tuba?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, no,
We've got a violinist and a guitarist.
Yeah, I think there's some correlation that I've seen with engineers and software, whether they're coders or software engineers, and musicians. There's definitely some kind of, I don't know if it's causation, but there's definitely a correlation. So I don't know if they're math kids or not, but there usually is something there between the two.
They're both good math students, but there is a linkage between medicine and music. The thinking is that when you're learning to read and write music, and when you study medicine, it's effectively learning a new language, and so facility with languages translates in theory to a facility in those professions later on. So,
all right. So, are you going to burst the bubble, Aruna? Do you play an instrument?
I used to take piano lessons, and I was a very poor piano player and a very reluctant piano practicer.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting next to a violin player right here. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
As with most of the things about our kids, they come from her. So.
Yep. No, I know how that story goes quite a bit. Now, are you guys first generation? Yes, are your parents from overseas, or was everybody born here?
So the two of us were born and raised here, but all 4 of our parents were born and raised in India.
So walk me through what that's like as far as when you start. I mean, both of you have very accomplished education, so you're academically inclined. And then from there, your careers ascend quickly. How much of that would you say is being a first generation, or is that not come into play as much and it's more just you individually, you're just intrinsically driven?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from being first generation. I think that just growing up and seeing my parents' work ethic, and it wasn't easy for either of them to become physicians, and we were well aware of that, my sisters and I. And there was just always this expectation that that school came first, studying always came first, and we were just expected to do well in school and to have, like I said, become a doctor or an engineer. So I think that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I mean, there's no. I'm certainly here because of my parents and the sacrifices they made, the priorities and values that they emphasized. It was all about hard work, education, discipline. I mean, this is very little to do with me individually, and it's almost entirely a function of the family I was born into, the parents that I was fortunate enough to have. So it's absolutely a credit to them.
So how does that transfer or trickle down to your kids now? Because obviously you guys weren't born overseas. You didn't live the same life that your parents lived. Do you say the same things that they said to your kids? Like, how do you translate that?
We try very, very hard, I think, but it's not quite the same. I worry. I want them to have that same sort of work ethic, and I think that they are, as they get more and more mature, are realizing how important it is. I think that they see their cousins and their aunts and uncles and just how hard everybody works. And I think that they understand that it's the importance of it.
Yeah, I would agree. And both the kids are good students, and our daughter's still at an age where it's still sort of their grades or things of that nature aren't quite yet of import. But our son, he'll be entering high school next year, and so he's very motivated. It's been impressive to see how he gets his work done, and he does well, I think. And they also realize kind of what we talked about before. I think they do see an example with us of working hard and what it takes to achieve certain things. And so I'd like to think that we're transferring those values to the next generation, but I guess time will tell. So
yeah, look, it's the classic, you're leading a horse to water, and it's up to them if they want to drink it. And I always tell my own kids, I'm like, look, I'll put you on the path, but it's up to you to stay on it. I can't live your life for you. I can't take your classes for you. I can't make those decisions that are going to come up when you're a teenager that are going to affect your life. You're going to have to make them and all that kind of thing. And meanwhile, when my daughter takes the car, I stare at the wall for 3 hours and wait for her to come home. So just wait. When the driving is when it really hits the fan.
Yeah,
that's for sure. So I'm going to embarrass you a little bit. I've known a fair amount of executives over the 20 years I've been doing this, and I think Vivek is one of the more universally respected people that I know. And Aruna, I'm curious if that's just really annoying to you. Like, it bothers me to no end. And I just put up with it because I have to, but I'm curious what it's like being married to that.
Oh, I mean, I often wonder, he's so successful at work. So successful, yet can't seem to, just the basic thing of, if you finish something in the kitchen and the fridge, just put it on the list, put it on the shared list. Or, like, yes, that thing from the dishwasher, it goes in this drawer, it's always gone there, but for some reason that won't stick. Like all the data about different sports teams, that all sticks.
Yep. And all the movie lines and all of the things that are completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
There's information hierarchy.
Like he's clearly very good at work, right? But yeah, it drives me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I listen to people for a living, and my wife goes, seriously, you do it all day for 20 years. How come you're not hearing anything that I'm saying? And the running joke is always, I just go, what? And she stomps out, but that's usually how that rolls. And no, it's interesting because you both have that in common, that in your world, you are so immensely highly regarded. And I wonder, though, because I'm not. I don't live that life. But what's it like shedding that when you get home, and then you got to take out the garbage, and you have to help with homework, and all of a sudden, all those trappings of people telling you how brilliant you both are, you're like, yeah, I still got to scrub. I don't know. Do you have pets? I don't know if you have pets, but pets are very humbling, and they make the smartest people doing things that they never thought they'd be doing. So I'm curious about that. Are you able to be able to shed that and just be yourselves and just be parents and just leave all that at both your offices?
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. Yeah.
I think it's actually hugely important, and has a big benefit professionally too, because I've seen people who retreat into work because if you are a certain level in the organization, then to some extent people have to do what you tell them to do. You get information filtered to you that's typically filtered through rose-colored lens because people want to and it can be very easy to fool yourself into thinking that bubble is reality. And so I think it's actually healthy to come home and realize that veneer is gone, and you are to your point, you're the one cleaning up, you're the one, you're part of a team, and you get unfiltered, honest information. And if you're open to hearing it, I think it keeps you grounded. I really value what Aruna has to say about me or to me or the kids and so forth, because you realize they don't have an agenda. And that's not to say that, but you just know you're getting information that, from someone who genuinely cares about you, who has your best interest at heart, and that ultimately is trying to help you get better. And so if you can keep that in mind, I think it's actually think it's really valuable in terms of helping you perform better professionally.
Yeah, I would go along with that. I think also the thing that you guys seem like you do really well is you set an example of how to support each other. So both your kids, if and when they get married, they'll say, well, this is how you're supposed to treat your spouse. You're supposed to bring them up, and you're supposed to speak to them with respect, and you're supposed to, more important than anything else, listen. And I always think that when my kids are watching me and my wife discuss something somewhat intense, like we're moving to a new home, and the conversations are fairly adult and kind of intense because there's so much going on, and I always try to include them and try to never get argumentative because it's a problem we're solving together. And are you aware that they're watching, or you guys are having your conversation, they're just kind of flitting around the house doing their own thing?
No, we're aware that they're watching, and
their hearing is the best when we talk to each other.
Yep.
We're talking to them. Yeah. Then they can hear everything, but somehow
they hear virtually nothing when we talk to them directly, and there's not a thing that they miss when we talk to each other.
Yeah.
So, well, yeah, I think they're paying attention.
Yeah. We have a system set up. We all eat together, and then the two of them know they're supposed to get lost, after we eat, and their only responsibility is to take their plates with them to the sink, and after that they can go do whatever they want. And the truth is, our conversation bores them to tears anyhow, so it's not like we're saying anything funny or interesting. That's for sure. So what's it like having your parents there watching you raise your kids? Do they pitch in? Do they just watch as a spectator? Are they hands-on? Like, what's it like having them so close like that?
It's so the last 7 months have been somewhat challenging because both my parents are cancer survivors, and with Aruna seeing patients in the hospital all the time and so forth, we've had to keep our distance. So they're interacting less with the kids than they were prior to the pandemic, and that's hard for them.
Yeah.
But they at least my perspective is they haven't tried to Monday morning quarterback or contradict, or I definitely think that there is they're more sort of your traditional grandparents in the sense that they try to enjoy time with the kids. Are probably more lenient than we would be in accommodating of, okay, well, you don't have to finish this, or, which is kind of
Dad never did his homework.
Yeah, it's kind of exactly. It's kind of a grandparent's prerogative on some level, but
Did you teach them how to Zoom? Are you able to see like up their nostrils as they're looking in the camera because they can't do it right?
Our daughter, she actually FaceTimes my mother every day
Really?
when she practices violin, and so she practices her violin with my mom as her audience, and
That's perfect.
it's kind of one of the highlights of my mother's day. She looks forward, so she'll text me if she hasn't heard from Nina saying, is everything okay? But yeah. So and then with tennis, the nice thing about that is it's outdoors, so they'll come and they'll watch their lessons.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so there's ways, and living in Northern California is great too because the climate's conducive. Well, there isn't smoke in the air, but the climate's conducive to doing things outside, and so so we definitely try to take advantage of whatever opportunities there are to maintain contact. But like hugging and stuff like that, right? We just need to be mindful of that, or indoor activities. So, but they haven't. I think they have tried not to be intrusive, and I think it's really nice to have them part of the kids' daily life, because I mean, I saw my grandparents maybe once every couple of years, because they live halfway around the world. So
yeah, I genuinely think that it's good to have a bit of an older perspective for kids. Like I see my son, he sits with my dad, and my dad's a knucklehead, but he's the funniest guy you'll ever meet. Whenever my dad's talking to my son, I'm always worried about whatever quote unquote wisdom he's imparting, but all I see is them having a good time. And there's just nothing like it. The two of them giggling. I don't know whose maturity is higher. It's close, and yet it's wonderful. It's the best part of my day when I see that happen. So yeah, so I'm glad for you. There's nothing like having them close by. Well, look, I got to say, when I first started this program, I was thinking about who my big George Clooney get would be, and you guys are it. So thanks so much for joining the program. Did I miss anything? Is there anything interesting, funny that I should hit? Because I know you guys have lived an interesting life, to say the least.
No, I think you've been rather comprehensive, very on brand for you, Mr. Kaufman.
Yeah.
But no, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Please, it was great. Well, everybody, please take a look at this entire conversation. They're as fascinating people as you're going to find. Thank you from the family business, where family's what binds us. You guys take care. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care. Thanks.